Welcome to the Vantage Fit Corporate Wellness Podcast. This podcast is sponsored by Vantage Fit, the all-in-one AI-powered corporate wellness platform developed by Vantage Circle.
Employees, as we know, make the most valuable assets of the organization, and organizations are recognizing that, and as a result, they are prioritizing employee health and wellness. In recent times, burnout is one common thing that is prevalent in almost every company. Employees are exhausted and heavily stressed, and as a result, it leads to burnout. It is much more than just a word. In fact, the stressor of the modern work environment has started to wear on employees, and it has a direct impact on their physical and mental well-being. Which brings me to the topic of employee wellness. Employee wellness is ensuring that your employees are well and fit, and their physical and mental well-being is intact. It includes activities and programs aiming to improve their health and well-being. And prioritizing employee well-being is one of the main ways an employer can reduce burnout in their companies. So let's talk more about this in today's episode of Vantage Fit. Today we have Debbie Bellenger with me. Debbie Bellenger is working full-time as a solopreneur of body by definition, providing advisory services to individuals and organizations who wish to add wellness programming to their menu of services and offerings, and providing coaching to business owners who wish to sell their services to corporate America, providing strategy mapping and operational roadmap and plan. Debbie was in the role of Health Management and Wellness Director for Pinnacle Health Management based in Irvine, CA. In this role, she was overseeing a health management team made up of 8 nurses. In addition, Debbie has extensive medical wellness experience both in programming and center operations. She was the first director of wellness for 2 healthcare systems, SC and NC. Welcome to the show, Debbie.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
We're glad to have you here today. So let us begin with our first question. So tell us your experience in the field of wellness.
I expanded my wellness career by starting a role as director of wellness for a hospital system. So I had not done that kind of work, although I was still overseeing the hospital fitness center by virtue of being on a hospital payroll system. Then I was able to learn how to do employee wellness programs. I was able to do medical wellness programs for our patients to come to our fitness center and get special attention after a heart attack or surgery or bariatric surgery, diabetes, all those kinds of things. So when I was in South Carolina, that was more of an expansion of my career from fitness to wellness. And after 12 years in South Carolina, I was recruited to another hospital system in North Carolina as the director of wellness. And so again, I was very blessed to have the opportunity to create the employee wellness program for our employees and do the community wellness program for any group in the local community, which was schools, churches, local employers, supporting them in their wellness programming. And in addition to overseeing a 13,000 square foot medical wellness center where I, again, was able to create and customize all these wellness programs for the local community and our patients specifically. I had 9 years in North Carolina, and then I was recruited to South Florida to be the Senior Vice President of Healthy Living for 9Ys in South Florida. And that was an amazing journey. I was able to be in that role until COVID happened, and then I lost my job with many, many others. So I've been very blessed to grow up in the industry through fitness, being a master trainer, providing education, at the same time having a director role both for private entities, governmental agencies, and the hospital systems and the YMCA. So all that combined, I've been very blessed to be able to always work in health and wellness and become basically a specialist in wellness programming.
Wow. So that's really a pretty long journey, right? Like you said.
Yes, it is. It tells you that I'm not 20, right? That's right.
Yes. Okay, so now tell us, what is well-being in the workplace?
Yeah, so I like this question a lot, Dipshi. I feel like when I would say 3 years ago, before the pandemic, the language was more about wellness in the workplace. And I do believe that the language has changed post-pandemic on the heels of almost the end of the pandemic to be more of the well-being language in the workplace. And so the difference for me from wellness to well-being is that well-being comprises the whole of the individual, right? So it allows for conversation around mind, body, spirit being present at work. And it's a holistic approach to taking care of employees at a work site. And so it's a little bit more inclusive. I think it's more appropriate post-pandemic, because one of the things that we can clearly all say is that well-being has a very individualized definition for each and every human being. And when you're in the workforce, it can mean different things to different people. But I think the idea of it being a comprehensive, holistic approach, well-being is a much better term, where employees can know when they're at work that all of them is taken care of and all of them matters. So we lean a little bit more into human beings versus human doings, right? So the idea that when you come to work, you present with your whole self. And so you're not just dipshy, the worker of the day. You're still a mom, a sister, a friend, a volunteer, all the things that are you the person. That's what we're talking about when we talk about well-being. And so I do like the maturing of the language in our industry and the recognition that well-being in the workplace is what we're talking about now. I think that's a great thing.
Just like you said, that the well-being in the workplace is pretty much different from general wellness, right?
Yes, it is. It really is. Yep.
Yes. Mm-hmm. People often get confused between the two words. Like they pretty much assume that both are the same. But I think there's a bigger picture to that, right?
Yes, I agree with you 1,000%. Yes.
Okay. So like talking about well-being in the workplace and wellness. So why do you think is employee health essential for organizations? And what is your take on the growing popularity of employee health?
I'm going to answer the second question first, and then I'll come back to the first. I think the growing popularity clearly it's being predicated on employee discontent, employee dissatisfaction, employee reevaluation, 2 years of reflection, what's important in life. It's like the world had a timeout with COVID, and we still had to keep things going, but a lot of things changed, which forced a lot of us to take time to reflect on what really mattered. And so I think one of the things that's happening globally with the Great Resignation or the Great Redirection or whatever it is that we're calling it this week, effectively is the mass exodus of employees from many, many different companies. And it's different sectors. It's not just one sector of business where we're seeing employees walk away from different positions. It's service industry, it's healthcare, it's business, it's everything. And so with the Great Resignation, I think, unfortunately, employers and leaders have had to stand up and take note that they need to do things differently than they did before the pandemic. And so if the philosophy of a leader was get the work done no matter how, when, whatever it took, with no consideration of the human beings doing the work and the spirit of team and engagement and employee satisfaction, if all those variables within the workforce were considered as non-essential before the pandemic, now they're being viewed as essential because the Great Resignation is real. And it is a very difficult chapter for HR, for human resource professionals right now in many sectors to find employees. So I think the growing popularity of employee health and wellness at work, because of my experience in corporate wellness and doing so much of this work, I know for a fact that there's a direct correlation between employee health, wellness, employee happiness, employee engagement, and employee retention. And so sometimes when we don't pay attention to things, by virtue of the fact of the Great Resignation, employers now have to pay attention to employee health and well-being. And why it's important is because at the end of the day, we are human beings at work, and we spend more time at work than we do at home. So not only is it an individual responsibility to be healthy and well and make good choices, but it's also an organizational responsibility to create environments and benefit plans and employee wellness offerings for employees that help support individuals at work to make the healthiest choices, have the necessary benefits at hand. So unfortunately, I think I've always believed employee health and wellness is essential for organizations. It's absolutely imperative. Why it's growing in popularity is because the Great Resignation is forcing the conversation of how do we keep employees? How do we find good employees? That's been a conversation that's been ongoing for a long time, but it's been escalated by the pandemic, clearly.
Yes, like especially after COVID, the health and wellness sector has like come up big time, because like after COVID, everyone has gotten more concerned about their wellness and everything. And in fact, I believe that is the reason most organizations are also prioritizing employee health, because at the end of the day, a healthy employee is a productive one, right? So if the employees are not well, so they will not be able to deliver anything for the organization as a whole, right?
That's a really good point. So yes, there is a correlation between the health of our employees or the lack of health of our employees, right? So like you said, if an employee is unwell and or sick and or has multiple chronic conditions or metabolic syndrome, this is a very good point that you bring up. In actuality, even though they might be at their desk for 8 hours of time, it might only be 6 hours of productive time, because they're having a lot of doctor's appointments. They're having problems focusing at work because they don't feel well. So you bring up a really, really good point there. And that's another pain point organizationally for companies, that if companies don't pay attention to the health or lack of health of their workforce, what's going to happen is medical claims costs and pharmacy claims costs are going to go up. So the total cost of care to an employer will continue to rise with unhealthy employees. In America, it's forecasted by the CDC that by 2030, which is not that far away, over 50% of Americans will have a BMI greater than 30. Well, that's a clinical diagnosis of obesity. And that's not a standalone condition. So an obese individual, more often than not, will have other chronic conditions besides that diagnosis of obesity. There'll be hypertension issues, potential diabetes, hyperlipidemia, all these things that can be mitigated by medicines and doctor's visits. But at the end of the day, what we really want to promote is health, right? Good choices, so we don't have to be on medicine, right? So you bring up a very good point. The cost of sickness is not sustainable, and it does not lead to productive, happy, healthy employees on the job. So that's a really good point.
Yes, in fact, like after COVID, this thing has like gotten more intense. Everyone is getting COVID, like they are suffering from the like coronavirus and everything. So their immune system are also gotten weak. So in that case, in that entire scenario, the organizations are also very much like concerned about what is going to happen to their employees and everything.
That's right.
So I believe that is one of the big reasons why employee health is getting so much attention in the current times.
Yes.
Okay, so like moving on to the next question, do you think there are various dimensions of wellness?
There are. There are many associations that are involved in health and wellness, some that are corporate specific and individual. And the National Wellness Institute has a model that references 6 dimensions of wellness. That's probably the one in all the research that I do that I see most often, right? It's not the only one, most certainly, but within the National Wellness Institute model, they talk about the 6 dimensions of wellness being emotional, spiritual, intellectual, social, physical, and occupational. And I think that's a really good global model of wellness. It encompasses all the key elements. Certainly when you get into the workforce and you start talking about wellness programming for employees or education opportunities, things like financial wellness also get discussed, because one of the outcroppings of the pandemic is that a lot of folks post-pandemic are in a worse situation financially now than they were before the pandemic. So a lot of hard choices have been made where, with daycares closing and a lot of folks that had a 2-income household are now a 1-income household. And so financial wellness seems to be a topic that's coming up as well as a wellness offering. So depending on which group you look at, there are different ones. WellCOA is one. There are different dimensions of wellness, but the National Wellness Institute with the 6 is a really good overall model for the conversations of wellness.
Okay, that's a very even I knew that there were several dimensions of wellness, but I did not know which are what. So thank you for throwing some light on that.
You're welcome.
So when we talk about employee wellness, how do you think employers can measure whether their employees are going through a difficult time in terms of their health and wellness?
That's a great question. So within the space of employee wellness, looking at the individual responsibility and lens versus the organizational, so the employer lens, things that can be measured within employee wellness from the employer side of things, you can start very simply with subjective measures that are testimonials of participation, percent participation, that kind of thing. But typically employers organizationally are going to measure wellness by the savings of healthcare dollars. So it's going to be cost savings, typically looking at the health plan, both the total cost of care, which will be a breakdown of the spend on pharmacy and medical combined. So how much money is spent on prescriptions, doctor's visits, that combined is the total cost of care. So that is one overarching measure that employers will evaluate the effectiveness of wellness programs. Another will be the number of sick days that employees are taking pre-post having a wellness program. As employees get healthier, do they take less sick days? So that can lean into a measure of productivity at work. And often employers are going to measure employee satisfaction. Most medium to large size companies have employee engagement surveys. And so they'll measure these kinds of things within those surveys, right? So it typically comes down to cost savings, cost avoidance, getting the employees healthier, more present at work, more productive at work. Those will be the top 5 or 6 things that employers are going to look for.
Yes, these are very good points. Every organization and manager should actually take a note of this. Otherwise, how would they even be aware of whatever their employees are going through? So there has to be certain points they can pay attention to, like you mentioned, taking sick leaves. And so if an employee is taking sick leaves every other day, so obviously there will be a question why something is wrong with that person, right? That person is going through something in terms of their health, maybe.
Yeah, we something we used to do, Dipshi, when I had multiple contracts in one of my hospital director jobs, was we would track the number of sick days, but we would also track which days of the week the employees called out sick. So to your point, it was not uncommon to see across an organization of 1,200 employees, most sick days landed on Mondays and Fridays.
Oh, okay.
No. That's surprising, right? So it was, you would step back, and when you started to dig in on the data to look at, if employees are getting healthier or well, it then can lend itself into conversations around, do you need long weekends? And I think the world needs this right now. Where it's okay to say to your supervisor, I'm just exhausted on the heels of the pandemic, and I want to take every second Friday off using my PTO for a mental wellness day. I just want to have a long weekend, versus calling out sick and positioning it as a sick day when in fact it's really, you just need an extra day off to feel better. So I think, organizations can learn that we need leaders and supervisors that create safe spaces for employees where well-being is all of this, right? Being able to approach your boss and say, over the summer months, I want to take every second Friday and I've got enough PTO to do it. I'm going to spend long weekends at the cottage with my family. And by September, I'll feel better, you know?
Yes, exactly. It's the responsibility of the employer to make the employees comfortable enough to open up to them, right? So if an employee wants to maybe after a Saturday night or Sunday party, they want to rest on Mondays. So they might end up taking a sick leave because of that. So if the employer is approachable enough, like you mentioned, so that becomes very easy for the employees to be honest about it.
Yes. It's creating a culture of caring where conversations of health are normal and not frowned upon. Some companies have, in addition to an employee engagement survey that they'll do annually or biannually, some companies have started to institute employee resource groups where the group is actually led by an employee versus a leader. And so it's allowing for boots on ground conversation around what are the wellness challenges, what are the employee challenges, where a focus group can effectively hear the challenges from other employees, but then take it on up to senior leadership so that it can be vetted, be made aware of, and then solutions brought back to the table, right? And I think companies need to be more aware of that. They have got to have, like you said, how do they know how the employees are doing? Well, they have to listen. They have to create infrastructure that is very supportive of creating a culture of caring, however you want to get there, right?
Yes. And I believe there should be a day for like mental health day off. If there is such a day called a mental health day off, then even the workforce will be more willing to, for example, take a day off in a month or a week maybe for their mental health.
I totally agree with you. And so much so when I was running these corporate wellness programs for our hospital system with all the local employers, after a few years with each company, you know, the incentive gifts and the prizes and things that we always did, we would do a walking challenge and there'd be gift cards and, you know, nice gift cards, $200 Amazon gift cards and massages, and free sneakers and all these things. If you're with a company for a few years, after 2 or 3 years of wellness programming and the same incentives, then we started to go to bat to have the conversation of having the mental health and wellness day. So if you won a challenge, you could have a PTO day given to you. So one of the prizes was 8 hours of PTO for a mental health day. I would love to see all companies do that, right?
In Vantage Fit, we have similar programs where we are given a set of tasks, for example, walking 4,000 steps per day in a week, or completing 25,000 steps in an entire week. So once we achieve those tasks, we are given awards in the form of points, and those points we can redeem as gift cards. So I believe whatever you were saying is very much similar to this, right?
It is, yes.
Yes. So we are actually, like in my organization, we are actually going through this. So, and this keeps us motivated, right? On every Monday, so we go to work and then we see that this week we are given this task, so we have to do this. For example, water challenge. Sometimes we have to drink this 8 glasses of water a day. So as we keep on doing the tasks, we are given the points and as rewards. So this keeps us going, right?
Right. So it'd be really, that's a beautiful model and it works clearly, which is what you're saying. So another layer to that could be one of the rewards, maybe future state, is 8 hours of PTO or 4 hours of PTO, even just a half day. You know, you get to leave Friday at noon and have a little bit of a longer weekend. The employees that I used to work with loved that, just loved it. It was like gold, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So talking about, like you mentioned like a while back about employee retention, right? So how does employee well-being affect employee retention and the company culture?
So they are, in my mind, they're totally related, right? So employees want to, and this is a personal belief based on my many years of experience working in wellness, medical wellness, and corporate wellness. I truly believe almost all employees want to do a good job. right? So they come to work and they want to do their best. And where it starts is the company culture has to support from a new employee onboarding to year over year of committed attendance at a company where you're committed to stay with your company year over year. That company culture has to be fostered and nurtured with employees. And it has to be done in many different ways, right? From the day that you get, it starts with the very first interview, in fact. That's your first impression of the company. And so the company culture has to ingrain what it is that shows employees, whether you're just hiring on or you've been there for 15 years, that you matter to the company. And so the organizational lens is for you as an employee. The company culture very clearly itemizes for you your value, what your role is. You understand your why every day. And because the company culture so clearly delineates all that for you as an employee, you present as the individual to work every single day knowing what your why is. And if your values align with that why, then retention is going to be beautiful, right? Mm-hmm. You totally understand the company culture, the values of the company, the mission statement. You feel it in your bones and you want to be part of it and you want to make it better. And so there's that connect between the organizational culture, mindset, philosophy, the values, all of that with you, the individual worker. And when that synergy happens and you're well taken care of and you feel like you're cared for day over day, then retention it's excellent. It's really, really good. Mm-hmm. When employees have opportunity through a benefit plan designed to have walking challenges at work and points and gift cards and benefit plan that really does meet their needs. So right now, with 1 in 5 Americans being burned out, we have a mental health crisis in America. So does the benefit plan, the company culture, support the changed needs of employees post-pandemic? What employees may be needed before COVID, maybe is a different benefit plan design right now. So all of those things together, and I think it's something that's very dynamic, Dipsy. It's not a company culture. And I think a lot of companies do this. Mm. You have your initial interview, you have your onboarding, whether it's a day, 2 days, a week, 2 weeks, 3 months, whatever it is. And then you start working. And then 1 year becomes 2 years and 2 years becomes 3. We as leaders need to be very mindful that a culture is a dynamic thing, right? It's a living, breathing organization. And so that needs to be discussed regularly. Company culture, changing needs, changing economy. Now we're going into a recession. All these things from the top down, it just means that leaders need to communicate well and they need to hear the needs of employees so that employees feel taken care of. And I think when those things happen, there's a really good resonance of you feeling like you're a valued employee and you wanting to stay with a company that you understand, right?
Yes. You'll be more inclined to be loyal to that company, right?
Very much. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So when talking about employee retention and company culture, I believe there are certain toxic traits which affect employee wellness in organizations, right?
Yes.
Okay, so what are they?
I think the number one thing for me right now, having worked in this for a really, really long time, is a lack of listening and hearing and asking of what employees need. One of the buzzwords I'm hearing in human resources right now is employee voice, employee choice. And with the Great Resignation, it is all about the employees and what they need. And I truly believe that should have been the way it's always been, right?
Yes.
Like, how can you run a company and not listen to your employees and be proactive and ask regularly what their needs are to create a culture of caring and a safe culture where you feel like it's okay to not be okay.
Yes.
Some days, where it's it's okay that maybe Dipshy needs to miss 3 weeks of work to take care of her sick mother who has COVID. And you don't feel as an employee that there's anyone looking down on you for that. In fact, from the company, you only feel love and support because they have a culture of caring, right? So I think one of the toxic traits is truly companies that are not listening to their employees. It's the idea of, just come to work, shut up and do it, and get the work done. And that's where that human doing really conflicts with the human being. We're not widgets, right?
Yeah.
And so some of the other toxic traits I would say are what I've seen a little bit of, and I know it firsthand from some other friends and family. But when COVID happened and employees went into a work from home, some companies instituted time monitoring systems on computers because they didn't believe that their employees could be responsible enough to work from home and get the work done and actually work 8 hours. So I have family members that, their computer is monitored every time they're logged in and or on. I find that toxic. I mean, talk about distrust at the highest level, right? To me, that's incredibly toxic. If the world has shut down and we have to keep a business running and the option is work from home, I don't think employees should be feeling like they're being penalized by extra monitoring on their computer device, their cell phones, or this kind of thing. That, for me, that's a toxic behavior in the workplace. I think something else is going on that's just the reality of post-pandemic work is with so many employees stepping out of the workforce, I think another toxic element right now is employees being expected to repeatedly do more with less, with more time pressure. So with the mass exodus of employees out of corporate America, for the employees that remain in the job, they might now be doing the job of 3 people while vacancies are unfilled, right? Yes. And I don't think I see that as toxic as well, because everyone has limits and roles and responsibilities need to be clear. It's when things get a little muddy that employees become dissatisfied, disengaged. And when that goes on for a long time, that's low productivity. Employees can get sick because they're not feeling good, all that type of thing. And then the ultimate is
burnout, right?
Yelling or screaming, or across a Zoom meeting. So I think there's a lot of things that can really disrupt a healthy workforce, and one that should be a culture of caring versus putting more pressure on employees in a very tense situation anyways, post-pandemic.
So like these traits eventually lead to burnout, right?
They do. Yes, they do. Yes.
Yes, and like after COVID, many organizations have laid off their employees, right? And like it was a cost cutting technique for them. But then a lot of people lost their jobs and everything, and their work pressure increased simultaneously. Yes. So I was reading a study recently in Employee Benefit News. It's one of the HR newsletters that I follow because of my work in corporate wellness. And this was this is from 2022, but the some of the data that was reported that was suggesting we're in a health crisis. Not only are we in the health crisis of the pandemic, but to your point, Dipshy, of the health crisis of burnout and mental health issue. So this particular study showed that the fear and fatigue being experienced by employees has had cumulative effects on chronic health conditions, coupled with delayed care because employees did not go and get their annual well visits because they were afraid to go out in the community, doctors' offices closed, all this. So some of the stats here that I found, employees are reporting a decrease in mental health, 42% post-pandemic, a decrease in social well-being of 41%, a decrease in financial security of 32%, and a decrease in their overall physical health of 30%. So burnout clearly is on the rise, and 1 in 5 Americans is reporting a mental health condition. So it means for
all those other employees that have yet to recognize that they are in burnout, that statistic in all reality, 1 in 5 might be 1 in 4 because there's many undiagnosed individuals, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so when you talk about corporate wellness and everything, so what are your views on corporate wellness programs, and like what type of wellness programs do you think is most important for ensuring employee well-being?
That's a really good question. I think the number one thing right now for all employers is employee choice, employee voice. Number 2, from my programming background, the second most important thing, in addition to listening to your employees, is meet employees where they are. So what we used to do in corporate wellness is no longer necessarily the way that it needs to be. So when I started in corporate wellness, we always started with exercise programs at work, so walking programs. And then we would tackle nutrition, right? Nutrition programs at work. And then we would do stress management, and then we would do tobacco cessation. And it was always in that order. And I think now one of the most important things is to start where the employees are. So if we know that 1 in 5 employees is burned out, we should be starting with programs that address mental health and wellness, doing burnout seminars and burnout workshops, and teaching employees the signs and symptoms and how to avoid a full-on diagnosis of a clinical burnout, right? Because it is a clinical condition now. And how do you know when you're approaching burnout so that you can learn strategies to go to work every day, find work-life balance, have things within the benefits plan that support you to do that. And so you don't have to realize an actual burnout diagnosis and be away from work from 3 months or something like that, you know? I think hearing the employee's needs, having the right wellness expert and or partner to programmatically provide education to employees. Clearly burnout right now, like you said, employees are more interested in their health right now than they've ever been. Like you referenced earlier, right? One of the things that's happened for all of us is maybe the fear of getting sick, stimulated by the fear of getting COVID, is a benefit of the pandemic. So maybe one of the good things that's happened is we're all paying a little more attention to the basic tenets of good health. Like your program, like you're walking, you're drinking your water. That's all really, really good stuff, because I will share with you, it is still amazing to me what the average person does not know about good health, and where we as wellness professionals assume that individuals know how many calories to take in a day, how many steps to do a day, how many hours of sleep, the importance of taking your medicine and not just stopping your blood pressure medicine, all these things that are aligned with having good health as an individual. The organizational responsibility of that is recognizing the need, hearing what it is that employees are interested right now, and offering the programs and education to support that. I think that's the key. And I don't know that starting with exercise for stressed employees is really the best solution to the problem right now. Because if Dipshy doesn't like exercise, and I'm saying, well, you have to participate in a walking program, and you're like, but I've got 3 children to take care of, and I'm a single mom, I'm taking care of my mom, and I have to work, I have to get groceries, and now you want me to do what? Like, you know, like it. So, you know, the wellness director tells you have to walk, and you're thinking, I can't even get the basics of my day-to-day taken care of. This is making more stress for me. So I think that's where meeting employees where they are with what they need post-pandemic, which is really, that landscape has changed. I really think that's the key, and providing the education for employees at work. So, I mean, we spend so much of our lives at work, right? So that's the best place to do it, and making it available to employees as a benefit of working for a company that really cares about their people. I think that's the key to success.
Yes, like even now, the wellness programs I believe have started to get more engagement, because now people are more conscious about their health. Like, even we want to avoid the basic diseases like fever and cough and cold, because every time, even now, if you have it, we think it's COVID. Right, we end up thinking that everything is COVID related. So I believe that the corporate wellness programs have now become more effective than ever in every organization.
Yes. And I think you're exactly right. And the biggest stimulator has been that employees, the world is now more interested in health and wellness than they've ever been. And you see it in all, I follow fitness newsletters, I follow fitness club newsletters, I follow HR newsletters, because I'm working in all of it, right? And the massive amount of dollars being spent on all kinds of apps, fitness club franchises, supplements, wellness travel retreats to recover post-COVID. It's insane. So the one takeaway, to your point, wellness is very much of interest right now.
Yes.
And rightfully so. It's good. It's a good thing.
Yes, even these days we have these wellness applications, right, where we can measure our, we can monitor our heart rate, we can track our steps, you can count our calories. Everything is sorted, even in in the virtual platforms. Even I have 1 or 2 apps like that in my phone. So just to keep track of my everyday tasks, everyday physical activities. And I believe when you're physically fit, your mental health is also improves, right? Both are correlated to each other. One influences the other, right?
Very much. Oh, yes. Yes. Even 5 minutes of a walk outside with some sunshine can change the whole perspective of the day. It's so true. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So with this, we come to the end of this session. So would you like to share some suggestions for your listeners?
Yes, I think I think it is the time of self-care and prioritizing health and wellness as the new norm. It's and not viewing it as a selfish thing to take care of yourself. And I think leaning into it in a little more of a sophisticated fashion, that self-care is not a massage once a month or getting your toenails done, or it's finding, especially now post-pandemic, your work-life balance. And if you do work from home, you work remotely, learning the tips and strategies around creating a workspace and finding the line between church and state. So if you leave your home office and you go to the kitchen, have you left your work, or are you going back to work again after dinner? Those kinds of things, right? So I think some of the takeaways would be 100% prioritize your health, because as an individual, if you don't do it, no one else will do it. We can't look at a friend, a family member, a partner, and look at them and assume that it is their responsibility to make us healthy. We have to decide if we're going to move every day, what our nutrition choices are, keeping up with our annual care visits, all the things, right? So I think prioritizing health and wellness. I think for those listening that are in the employer space, the takeaway, the need for customized wellness solutions is paramount right now. Listening to the employees, what their needs and interests both are, and looking at your benefits plan and making sure that it aligns with what the new interests and needs might be post-pandemic. I think some of the challenges we're facing now and some of the benefits that maybe existed prior to the pandemic need a little bit of a tweak. And I think leaning into the data, like you said, whether it's at an individual level, Dipshi, where you've got your Apple Watch on or your Fitbit, there's power in your data, just knowing how many steps a day you did, how much water you drank, whatever app you're using. The power in the data for an individual like you and me is that it keeps us motivated. So like you said, 4,000 steps a day or 64 ounces of water a day. The fact that you have an app and you're tracking will lead to better outcomes and compliance around healthy lifestyle choices, right? At the individual level. Mm. And I think for the employer level is supporting those kinds of initiatives and programs and aligning it with the self-care of the company, that it's the thing that we do. We take care of our employees, and we have apps available to them, and we provide on-site education. We have a health and wellness committee for our employees. We provide health and wellness coaches for our employees. There are so many things that employers can do well and do right now. And I think it's the perfect storm of, at an individual level, employees being really interested in being healthy and employers being really interested in making it happen. So I think right now is the time. If you don't have an employee wellness program right now, it definitively is the right time to start. It's just a really good time to start.
And like on an individual level, and the motivation should come from within, right? So we should not rely on other people for the motivation. So if we want to do like work out or take care of ourselves, we should do it from, the motivation should come from inside, right?
Yes, exactly right. Yes.
Okay, so thank you so much for your time, Debbie. It was great talking to you. I hope you had a great time, hopefully.
I did. I enjoyed my time with you. Thank you so much for the invitation, and I'll look forward to serving you again in the future.
Yes, sure. Thank you so much. Like for the insights, I learned a lot. It was very, yes, it was very valuable, and I hope, I believe our listeners will enjoy the entire session as well. So thank you so much for joining us here today, and hope to connect with you soon, on a different topic this time maybe.
That sounds great. Thank you, Dipsy.
Yeah. Thank you. Have a good day.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
You as well. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Vantage Fit Corporate Wellness Podcast. Please do subscribe to Vantage Fit Corporate Wellness Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and our YouTube channel for new episodes.